Richard Childress has always been a name that carries weight in the racing universe. From his early days as a driver to becoming a team owner, he's always found a way to stay in the game. And this story is about survival, tough choices, and a vision that changed NASCAR forever. Back in 2019, Richard Childress sat down for an interview where he opened up about his past. He spoke about the struggles he faced in racing, his relationship with Dale Earnhardt, and how he almost lost everything before making it big. Many fans know about his success, but few know about the moments when he was on the edge of failure. He started his career as an independent driver, scraping by with whatever money he could find. His first car carried the number 96, but there was an interesting reason behind it. If you flip the number upside down, it looked like 69. That small joke aside, his early days were anything but easy. Running a race team was expensive, and Richard had to be smart with his money. He always looked for ways to cut cost, and that's how he ended up with the number 3 on his car.
Yeah. Why did you go to number 3?
You know, I wanted a low number. Farrell Hinkle was lettering my cars, and he said, man, I didn't have a lot of money. He said, if you just get a single-digit number, I'll cut your cost in half.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up, and the 3 was available. I remember talking to Ray Fox, and I thought I got it through them. Then I talked to Al Rudd. He said we had it before, so I don't know how it all come about, but I ended up with the 3, knowing Ray Fox and how everything went down. And the Al Rudd, they could have gave it to me. I can't remember, but we ended up with the 3, and that's why, because I only had to pay half as much to hand letter it.
Sure.
So that's why
a good reason.
Richard ran his last Cup Series race in 1981 at Riverside. At the time, he was part of Junior Johnson's team, but his role was not what most would expect. Junior was focused on the championship battle with Darrell Waltrip, so Richard was just there as a backup. That race marked the end of his driving career, but the real story began after that. Stepping away from racing was not easy for him. He had spent years fighting for every position on the track, making ends meet by stretching every dollar. He could still race, and he was healthy enough to continue, but he saw the writing on the wall. Racing was changing. More money was pouring in, and big sponsors were taking over. Richard knew he could still get top 10 finishes, maybe even a top 5 on a good day, but that wasn't enough. He was running a business, and finishing outside the top spots meant losing money. Around that time, Dale Earnhardt was also in a tough spot. He was unhappy with his team, and Richard saw an opportunity. He knew Dale was a great driver, and if he could bring him on board, they could build something special.
Why I got out of it was I could see I was running it as a business. I was feeding my family, and all of us were living off of what I could make racing. But I could see I could have some top 10 finishes, run pretty good, every now and get a top 5. And then when Warner Hodgson, Harry Renier, Osterlund, all of these people started coming in with money, ORC just kept going backwards. You know, I wasn't happy running in the top 15, and I said, man, if I don't do something soon, I got to get out of this car. So I knew your dad wasn't happy with the Osterlund deal.
But making this move was a huge financial gamble. Richard was not a wealthy team owner. He was still a small operation trying to survive against the giants. In a move, Richard met with Junior Johnson in a motel room in Anniston, Alabama. They discussed the plan, and Richard knew this was his chance. He struck a deal with Wrangler for $10,000 per race. Over 10 races, that meant $100,000 in funding, but that money disappeared fast. The cost of running a competitive team was much higher than what he had anticipated. He had to hire new people, buy equipment, and build better cars.
He and I were hunting buddies down in South Carolina, and man, we talked about getting back together after those 10 races.
Yeah.
But those 10 races, I met with Junior at the old, I think it was a Motel 6 or whatever it was. We was staying in Anniston, Alabama, and talked about it. And then we went up to the Downtowner. I ended up getting, I think it was 10 grand or something from Wrangler, a race.
10 a race?
Yeah, 10 a race. And when it was
That's
all
pretty good
over,
money.
when it was all over, I'll never will forget when those 10 races were over. I was in debt $75,000.
Why?
And I was in trouble, but I never will forget. I went over and talked to Mr. Bowman. He ran the Wrangler, and I told him he added me another $50,000, and that's how I was able to survive. Is he paid me extra money for running for him because we ran good in some of those races.
Even with the additional funding, things weren't easy. Richard had taken a massive risk by expanding his team so quickly. The costs kept piling up, and the pressure was enormous. He was paying for cars, staff, travel, and many other expenses. Despite all of this, he kept pushing forward because he believed in what they were building. At the heart of this gamble was Dale Earnhardt. Richard knew Dale was a special driver, but he also knew that talent alone wasn't enough. They needed the right equipment, strategy, and luck to turn this into a winning team. During this period, Richard made another big move. He started testing new car designs, trying to find an edge over the competition. They took 115-inch wheelbase cars and converted them into 110-inch models. The idea was to make the cars more aerodynamic and competitive. This was a risky experiment, but Richard believed it could work. At one point, they had a driver named Greg Sachs test one of their cars. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. During a test run, Greg crashed badly, flipping the car. Richard did not want to discuss the details publicly, but it was clear the crash was a major setback.
And then we took, Greg Sachs to Daytona, and we were testing. We were building taking those 115-inch wheelbase cars and turning them into 110. Coming off a 4, it's a long story that I don't want to discuss on here, but coming off 4, he flipped it, put it up in the air. Hell, when he flipped up, went off the racetrack, went around the corner, there was his helmet. I said, oh, hell, his head's in it.
Holy
That's how bad a wreck it was.
Oh, my God. I saw there's pictures of the cars. They're very grainy, but he destroyed this car.
Yeah.
Lost his helmet.
Yeah, knocked his helmet off, knocked him out. He is in the hospital for a while, and I'll leave it at that.
Despite such dangerous experiences, Childress was determined to stay in the sport. Around the same time, he was working hard to secure sponsorship deals. He had high hopes when he approached a major airline company, thinking it was his chance to land a big deal. However, they were looking for a much younger driver, which forced him to look for other opportunities. This led to the hiring of Ricky Rudd, a decision that would later cause tension between him and Dale Earnhardt. Rudd was a talented driver, and he worked hard to build up the team. He had high hopes for his future with Childress, but everything changed when Earnhardt returned in 1984. Rudd felt that Earnhardt took over everything he had helped develop. Even years later, Rudd remained bitter about how things played out. He felt betrayed and believed that Earnhardt had been learning from him only to replace him. The history between Childress and Earnhardt is filled with twists and turns. In 1981, they worked together for 10 races, but at the time, Childress didn't have the financial resources to keep Earnhardt. They had discussed reuniting in the future, but it wasn't until a major sponsorship opportunity with Wrangler came up that they got back together.
We talked about it in 81. When we finished those 10 races, we both agreed. I didn't have the money. I didn't have the money to run in those 10 races. I had to borrow everything I could borrow. Dale and I had talked about getting back together, and the opportunity came along with Wrangler for he and I to get back together. So that's how Wrangler, he ended up sponsoring Bud Moore and us. And Bud Moore, I never will forget, he told me we was at Riverside. That's when we run Riverside. He said, boy, y'all won't last 6 months. Both of you is just alike. We made it 20-some years, 20 years or more.
Yeah.
But, those were some precious memories. Some of the greatest memories of my life came out of that era,
Oh, yeah.
And that's all we have for today's episode. Don't forget to give a like, hit that subscribe button, and also ring the notification bell for more upcoming uploads.